Since we released our e-NV200 camper car video, we've had lots of interest. As you can imagine, we've been asked lots of questions, and it seemed the best way of answering them was to make another video. And this is a kind of vlog video. We've got questions from YouTube, Facebook, people have emailed us, people have talked to us in person, so we're going to try and answer them. And today we're on a drive. We're actually driving around the M25. We've been to see some people. We're seeing what this vehicle can do. We're putting it through its paces. In a while we're going to charge it. We're just looking at what it's like living with. Press the button to start. The system does a self-test. The lights all light up and away we go. One thing you really have to get used to with the e-NV200 is how quiet it is. If you're used to driving a car with an ordinary engine, of course this doesn't make any sound. So when you're just moving around at a walking pace, there is no sound at all. Now the law's changed recently, so electric vehicles at low speed have to make a little bit of a noise to make it safe, so it's not dangerous for pedestrians. So they make a gentle sort of noise at low speeds. Could almost be regarded as unnerving how quiet this van is actually. All you can really hear is just a whisper of road noise. So we've been driving around town, we've had a good drive. The charging indicator, which is like your fuel gauge, is showing 83 miles at the moment. So we've still got just under half a tank, as you might say, of battery power we could burn. But I'm going to charge it up when we get to the services. Samuel, why don't you hit me with some of those questions people have been asking? Let's have a crack at answering them.
Yeah, so as you're already talking about the range remaining, one question people have is, what sort of range can you get out of an e-NV200?
Range, yes. So Nissan's official figures have the maximum range, what they call the WLTP range, quoted as 186 miles currently. Now in our testing we haven't quite achieved 186. That mileage implies round town usage. With an electric vehicle it's the opposite way around to with an internal combustion engine. It seems like the slower you go, the more efficient it is. You know, with a petrol or diesel car, it's at 55, 56 miles an hour, you tend to get the best economy, isn't it? Whereas with these, it seems that if you're going more slowly, you go further. I think the WLTP motorway figure is more like 130 something, somewhere there. So this vehicle's got two drive modes. There's D, which is like drive in an automatic car, but there's also a B mode, and the B stands for braking. So when you ease off the accelerator, the vehicle sends the electricity back the other way into the battery, recharging it somewhat and slowing the vehicle. So you're obviously saving energy, extending your range, but you're also saving on your brake pads and discs. They don't wear nearly so much, and once you get used to that way of driving, it's actually quite relaxing because you need the brake pedal a lot less than you're used to.
And how much can your driving style within an electric vehicle affect your range?
I think it's going to have an impact, isn't it? Obviously, if you accelerate hard, it's going to pull more battery power out, and high-speed running burns more power per mile. So I suppose if you're going to drive faster, you're going to get through the power more quickly, just like you would in a traditional car, I suppose. Interestingly, I've done about 3 miles and it still says 83 miles on here. It's interesting, isn't it?
That is. And I wonder if is that linked in with the braking?
Possibly, because I've turned on the regenerative braking. Might also be that it's estimating based on the kind of your driving that you're doing. The vehicle's continually estimating. So it's a little bit different from the fuel gauge in a car, an ordinary engine.
So what are the main running costs of an electric vehicle?
Well, that's an interesting point, because a lot of people don't realise that the routine servicing requirements you have with an ordinary combustion engine fuel vehicle just aren't there. I mean, there's no oil to change for a start, there isn't a clutch, there isn't a gearbox in that sense. You haven't got an air filter or a fuel filter. Really, the vehicle has got wheel bearings and some brake linings. And from a service point of view, there's not an awful lot else that needs routine maintenance. We could go into a lot more depth, but suffice it to say that your servicing requirement is vastly reduced. It's important for it still to be inspected and checked over, and of course when it gets to 3 years it will need an MOT test like any vehicle. but the vehicle is a much lower maintenance unit, and I think in time that will prove more reliable as well as lower cost. It's another cost you save if you make the move to electric. You're not going to have to pay the same kind of maintenance as you're used to with an internal combustion engine car.
How does the insurance cost for an electric vehicle vary from its combustion engine equivalent?
Well, certainly in terms of campervans, we've got some pretty preferential rates negotiated for our Sussex Campervans owners, and generally insurers regard campervan people as a good risk. Lots of our clients are getting insured for prices much lower than they thought they would. I think somehow us as a cohort of people, the campervan fraternity, drive safely and don't cause accidents and have problems. I've no reason to think that your electric campervan is going to wildly differ in insurance to your petrol or diesel campervan. I think it's fairly safe to say that insurance is a safe bet.
Another question we've got here is, how do you know if the battery is getting close to needing recharging?
Now, the traction battery, of course, I've got something on the dashboard here that looks rather like a fuel gauge, but rather than measuring in litres or what have you, it measures in miles, in the number of miles it thinks you're going to be able to do. And depending whether you're in the D mode or the B mode, depending on whether you've got the heating on, the air conditioning on, that will determine that range. It has to kind of guess based on how you're driving and how you've been driving, how far you might be able to go. As I said, this one's on 83 miles just now.
So how easy is it actually to find a charging point to plug in your e-NV200 when you're on the go?
Well, obviously it's a new technology, comparatively new, so the infrastructure for public charging is growing all the time. It's really helpful to have charging at home. I've just been charging this one initially with an ordinary 13 amp lead, which means that a full recharge would take quite a while. If you go from flat to right to full, would take most of a day. Once we've installed what's called a wall box at our home, that takes that down to a short overnight charge, 6-7 hours, something like that, depending on the model. Will charge you up at home. If you've got charging at your workplace, you can have a 3-phase charger, and that will let it charge faster still. But we are talking about public charging points, so obviously motorway services have had them for a while. Lots of town centres, lots of councils are beginning to push to put electric vehicle charging in. The network is growing at an exponential rate, and there are now a number of dedicated electric filling stations opening up where you can go, park up and have a fast charge. So fast charge on this vehicle, Nissan tell me you can go up to 80% charge in about 45 minutes. Something like that seems to be fairly typical for electric vehicles. So that would mean, say you're on a motorway trip, we said this could do 186 miles WLTP, but on a motorway that might drop to 120, 130. So let's say you've done about 100 miles, you might choose to stop at a service station, plug the car in, go and get some lunch or some tea, make a couple of phone calls, give it 40-45 minutes and then come out and drive on again. Well, in truth, filling up with diesel or petrol probably takes you 10 or 15 minutes, and if you fancy a little loo break and a cup of coffee and a sandwich or two, you've soon spent 40 minutes. So I think for a lot of people, if your average trip is under a couple of 100 miles, the range is quite workable. Nonetheless, it's important to accept that it's not the same as being able to fill up with petrol or diesel and drive off and do another 300, 400, 500 miles. It is different. Of course, these things are changing and improving all the time, and in the years to come, I'm sure we'll even achieve the same or greater ranges than we can with petrol and diesel today. But you have to take a plunge at some point, don't you? The electric vehicle has certainly come of age now. I think it's certainly a viable choice for some people, not for everybody. We're absolutely committed to our combustion engine products for quite a time to come. We're still developing new stuff, new models are still coming out. But for some people, especially if you live in a city and you'd like to have a campervan, this e-NV200 is discreet and small, and most of the exemptions that would apply for an electric vehicle would absolutely apply to this. There's still places offering free charging, discounted charging, preferential parking. There's lots of arguments in favour, as well as the obvious arguments against, about range. that if you want to do London to Scotland twice a week, well, probably not the vehicle for you. But actually, as we've chatted to clients, you look at what people are actually doing with their camper vans, a lot of people aren't driving more than 100 miles in a day. So you're having a nice trip round somewhere, you know, you'll tend to do 2, 3, 4 hours driving, and then you'll stop. And those kind of meandering, sort of step-by-step, point-to-point trips work really well on an electric camper van. So I'm just pulling into the service station now. I thought I'd give it a charge. In as much as in a petrol or diesel vehicle you wouldn't wait till you were down to the last drops of fuel before refilling. I'm on 77 miles, but I think I'm going to do one of these high-speed top-up charges. Just been driving on that section of the M25, which is all concrete, so I'm sorry if it's been a little bit rumbly. I'm here at Cobham Services, and of course the electrical charging is not in the same place as petrol and diesel, because with petrol and diesel you stand with the vehicle, you squeeze the nozzle for a few minutes and it's done, whereas with this you want to plug it in, park it, and go and have a comfort break, as they say, and have a coffee and maybe a snack while the vehicle charges up. So this vehicle charges from the nose, so I'm going to swing into a charging point here with the front of the vehicle first. We'll turn the vehicle off. Here's an ecotricity point, and this has got AC charging and DC charging. Down here under the dashboard there's a catch you pull. Looks like a fuel filler catch, but in fact this is for the electric charging. That releases the front panel here, which lifts up. So we've got 3 ports here. We've got a fly leads to connect to campsite supply for charging the leisure batteries. We've got this port here and this port here, and both of these are charging. So you see this with 2 big pins and this with 3 little pins. Now let's compare that to what we've got here on the charging point. DC, 2 big pins, and AC, that's got the little pins. Plug the vehicle in like that, press DC, so it says charging, batteries at 48%, it's charging at 365 volts and charging at 106 amps. The charge is making a very satisfying sort of humming noise, and power is pumping into the battery. Now on the dashboard of the e-NV200 you can see we've got some charging lights showing there. Those flashing lights let us know that charge is being received by the vehicle. And that's it, we can just leave the vehicle charging away now and go and have some refreshments. So we've had our coffee, we're on 146 miles, looks like it's about 90%. We just had a nice chat with some people on the next charging point. Seems like these ecotricity machines, and I think it's probably true of all these fast chargers, they stop at about that sort of level, or about 45 minutes. Interestingly, today this machine hasn't charged us, and the word on the street is that sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they'll give you a free charge, sometimes you have to pay. So we signed up for the app, we put in the card details, and then it's actually given us this particular charge free of charge. Apparently when you do have to pay, on these motorway service ones, it costs you about £7. So we're heading back onto the motorway. 146 miles in the tank we've got now, and we're heading off onto the open road. Very nice break that was too. So it seems to me the best way to charge these is to keep it charged up at home or at work, because that way it's going to cost you a lot less than about 30p a kilowatt hour, I think is what these charging points charge you if you do have to pay. And of course that's a lot more than buying your electricity at home costs. So the convenience is there. That was really pretty fast. There was no hassle at all. We just plugged it in, but you do pay a premium for that. I suppose it's a bit like buying petrol or diesel on the motorway, isn't it? As I'm driving past here now, I can see the fossil fuel products, shall we say, are about 20 pence per litre dearer than they are at our local we use at Sussex Campervans. Now let's follow Gatwick to get us back home.
How do you recharge the leisure battery in this vehicle?
The leisure battery, so that's the battery that powers the big inverter at the back, powers the lighting, the induction hob, all the sockets and things like that. Well, that's mounted towards the rear of the vehicle under the floor, and that is charged through a separate connection at the front where the charging points are for the traction battery. So you've got the traction battery and you've got the leisure battery. They're separate. Technically it would be possible to connect them together, but that's not something Nissan would sanction. When I asked them when I was doing the development, they said if you do that you'll void all the warranties. So I didn't. But it means you've got two separate hookup leads. If you're generally just using the vehicle for driving, you can just charge up the traction battery, whereas if you're on a campsite, you can plug that in and not only charge the leisure battery bank, but also you can run direct from the campsite power as well. And something worth saying is if you're on a campsite, perhaps on the continent where there's not much power, the inverter charger system that we're fitting has the capacity to assist. It's a grid-tied inverter, if you know what that term means. It has the power to assist the mains power and work in tandem with it to allow you to power more high current appliances in the vehicle. This inverter, it's really designed for off-grid living. It's a very powerful unit. It's much too good for a campervan, really. I just thought if we're going to do this, let's fit the best stuff. So it's a grid tie inverter, phase locks in with the mains. Your mains is AC, so phase locks in with the mains, and so it can give it a bit of a push. That's how it works, and yeah, great thing.
So when I'm at the services charging my vehicle, can I charge the leisure battery as well as the traction battery?
With the kind of charger we just used, that we know where to plug that in. So I'm going to say at this stage no to that. Having said that, things keep moving and changing. Now, of course, if you're charging on a campsite or charging home, you absolutely can. You can plug both things in. If you're on a campsite and there are two ports available on the post you're at, you can plug the charging into one for the traction battery, charging into one for the leisure battery. You could even use a Y lead, but we haven't trialled that yet. So it will depend on the quality of the campsite supply.
So essentially they're completely independent batteries with no relation to each other, and the charging of them is independent as well.
That's right, we've kept the systems completely separate. There's several reasons for that. One is so that were you to flatten the leisure battery, say by, I don't know, you'd have to do some work to flatten it, but say you're off hookup for a number of days and you're doing lots of cooking and drying your hair a lot and doing high current things, you're running heating as well in the back, and you actually manage to run that battery right down, it won't have affected the traction battery at all. You've still got all the power you had to drive, and I think that's the right way of doing it. Additionally, there is the issue of the Nissan warranty. They don't want us to do anything to their traction battery system.
So when you're charging the vehicle, can you still use all the appliances inside the vehicle?
Yes, from our point of view, you certainly can. If you're plugged in to charge the traction batteries or charge the leisure batteries, you can use all the facilities just the same. So that would mean you could be at a motorway services, rather than going and buying a coffee like we just did, you could make your own or pull something out the fridge, you could plug in your laptop computer, get your phone out, you could be working productively during the working day whilst charging, so you really aren't wasting any time at all waiting for that 45-minute rapid charge.
How does it feel driving it? You know, compared to a combustion engine vehicle, how does it feel? Is the steering light? What's the acceleration?
Yeah, I think this vehicle's got electric power steering. It's very light. It's very positive. Acceleration's pretty good. I mean, it's like an automatic with no gear changes. So I think the thing everyone says about electric is that the torque is there from the get-go. It's there from the second you touch the pedal. With my Mercedes, yeah, it's a great drive. It's very quick, but you have to wait at the traffic lights or what have you. You press the accelerator, you're just waiting for the gearbox to engage, whereas with this, it's engaged, it goes. So you get the torque right from the bottom, and that of course is because an electric motor has got a much more even power delivery over a range of speeds. So with a combustion engine, particularly diesel combustion engine, there's a narrow band of revs where it can really deliver optimum power, and so you need gears to get you in that, whereas with an electric motor you just don't. So the driving experience overall is really nice. I mean, it's certainly a lot quieter. There's a lot less to think about. Motorway's no quieter, of course. This particular concrete bit of the M25 is always a bit rumbly, but the vehicle's really quiet. Yeah, really quiet and effortless, I think is the word.
I think one of the great things about this vehicle is it is really like a car in the way you drive it, in the way that it feels. It's essentially a car with all these extra utilities inside.
It is. This is a vehicle like the diesel and petrol NV200 camper cars, of course, which people could absolutely replace a car with. You need to be aware of the limitations of the electricity, that you've got the range you've got. You need to know where you're going to charge it. But the experience of those who are running electric vehicles and have been for a while on the car front certainly is, once you get used to what it can do, it's surprisingly unrestrictive. At first you think, oh, I can't fill it up with petrol and just drive off. But actually, most of us have an idea what kind of journeys we're going to do, what kind of distance we're going to go, and you can absolutely plan around it. On the NV200 Techno model, there's a specialised sat-nav, which actually, when it sees you running out, it suggests charging points you could go to. It tells you how far they're away. You only need to say yes, and it will drive you straight to them. So that's really useful, and it's part of building that confidence that actually I've got enough charge, I've got enough range. I'm not going to run out. I'm going to be fine. One question I've been asked quite a bit in response to my YouTube video and Facebook posts is, how do you keep warm in the e-NV200 camper car? I mean, you're not using engine heating when you're going along. How do you keep it warm? Well, there's two answers to that question. The first one is the cab heating, which is independent of the electric motors. You can turn it on without the vehicle running, and it's very efficient. It's thermostatic. You can set it how you want it, and that's one way of keeping the whole vehicle warm. And the other way, of course, is through the leisure battery system at the back. We can supply you a small thermostatic plug-in heater, 500 watt plug-in heater, which is well able to keep the vehicle toasty warm, and it's thermostatic so it won't overshoot and get really hot and waste all your battery power. So there's two different ways of keeping the back of the vehicle warm, but of course whichever one you choose, it is using battery power, just in the same way as with the old system. You'd be burning gas.
So how long can I use the different utilities in the back of the campervan on the leisure battery?
Without being plugged in, right?
Yeah, without being plugged in, so sort of wild camping.
Of course, that is one of those piece of string questions in our ordinary campervans, which haven't got all the new tech in. We say that the leisure battery, the ordinary leisure battery, can support the fridge for at least 2 or 3 days, as long as you're not opening it every 10 seconds. Now this has got the same kind of fridge, but it's got a lot more battery power as well. We've got electric cooking. Someone's probably going to use some electric heating, and they're going to be charging up devices as well. You can cut it up a lot of different ways. I reckon you could do 2 solid hours of microwave cooking without flattening the batteries. Now if you think about it, no one ever microwaves anything for 2 solid hours. You could be doing a lot of, you could fry an awful lot of eggs on the induction cooker. In terms of things like laptops and charging phones and cameras and those kind of lower current appliances, you know, a long time. You could be running your laptop for days on end. It's anything that makes heat is what costs more power in terms of electricity. That's always a thing to ask yourself. This appliance I'm about to use, does it create heat? If it does, that's going to be thirsty on the battery. Other things, much less so. So I think the battery performance is going to be very creditable for almost everyone's usage.
So the e-NV200 camper car comes with an induction hob. How does that compare with a traditional gas hob? What are the benefits? What are the differences?
Well, it's interesting you ask about that actually. How that started was an experience I had at home. I was about to go to bed one night a few months back, and I always check around everything, and I realised that the hob in our kitchen was just on a tiny bit. There was a tiny flame, which till the lights were off no one had noticed, and furthermore there was a tea towel just over the edge of the cooker, and I felt we might have been facing a conflagration if I hadn't noticed. And so I thought, right, I've got to do something, and I took out the gas hob and I put in an induction hob at home, and what a revelation. We had to buy some new saucepans, but I tell you, so easy to use, so easy to keep clean, all the controllability of gas with none of the risk, and we just loved it, and I couldn't wait to integrate it in a camper van. So where better to start than putting it in the e-NV200, where we've got this big leisure battery supply, full-time mains power, and it just works really. It's so controllable, it's so easy to use, you can wipe it clean, and that element of risk, you know, there are happily none of our clients, but there are people who've just forgotten their kettle for a moment and actually set light to their camper van, That can't happen with an induction hob. Well, not as far as I can see anyway. So I think it's lots of pros and no cons really. And of course I should say you can plug in other cooking appliances. We've had one or two clients who plugged in a mini microwave and put it under the back seat. Another popular product is the Ramoska, which Lakeland imports, which looks like a saucepan, but actually it's a mini oven with the element in the lid. I've just bought one for us to experiment with. Really looks a great appliance. One of our clients recently turned up with some scones she cooked that morning in the Ramoska, and I have to say, they were good scones. Things like a slow cooker as well. There's something you could use in the Campervan. And you can bring your electric toaster. If you want to use an electric kettle, you can. You can just boil your water on the induction. So all your home appliances are usable on the system in the All Electric CamperCar.
One question people are asking about is, what are the different solar options available?
Solar's a kind of buzzword, isn't it? Everybody wants to have it. Everyone wants to say they've got it, and it is good. So it's a mixed answer, really. You absolutely can have it. We can fit solar that pretty much covers the roof, so you can have as much solar charging as is possible to have. However, as soon as you plug the vehicle in, the amount of charge it's pulling from the main system is so much greater. As you know, a couple of moments of that eclipses a day of solar charging. So it could be argued there's not much point. So we're not making it compulsory, we're saying it's an option. If you'd like to have it, you certainly can. The solar system can more than keep up with all the 12 volt appliances. It can keep up with the fridge and the lighting and all that if you're off hookup, and then some. In terms of the main electrical system, it's kind of a drop in the ocean really, but it's a good thing to have. It does keep the batteries trickle charged, and it's an option you can choose if you'd like to have it, and we'd be delighted to fit it. Well, we've enjoyed answering your questions, or having a go anyway. I'm sure there'll be more questions, and I'm sure we'll have more answers, because with anything that's new, there's always stuff you're discovering about it, isn't there? But do get in touch. You can email hello@sussexcampervans.com. You can phone us 01403 333 6369. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube videos, so when I make the next one, you get notified. And do find us on Facebook, Sussex Campervans on Facebook. We've got a growing community there. Ask your questions there too. Let's converse on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well, which I'm having lots of fun with. And of course, we're on Instagram and we're on Pinterest and lots of other fun things. So join us on all those engines. But most of all, do book to come and see us at Sussex Campervans in Horsham. We'd love to show you this product. Give us a call, come on over, and let's see if we can get you in your very own campervan, whether it's an e-NV200 camper car or whether the right solution for you is something bigger or a traditional petrol or diesel vehicle at this stage. One thing we are offering, which we're finding people are taking up more and more, is what we call our guaranteed upgrade scheme. It's got nicknamed Gus in-house, a guaranteed upgrade scheme. So if you see perhaps a used vehicle you like, but really it's a new one you're hoping for, but you want to get a toe in the water and see how right it is for you and get the chance to really specify it precisely how you want it, we'll offer you a deal on one of our stock vehicles with a guaranteed buyback price when you upgrade to the next one in a given period of time, say in a year's time, 18 months, 2 years. We can set it to suit you, so you know that you can be in a vehicle now and enjoy it, get a foot in the water, see how it feels, and you also know you're going to get a great price back for it when you come to upgrade either into electric or into a bigger vehicle, a smaller vehicle, whatever suits you. So when you call us, do ask about the guaranteed upgrade scheme, which is all about getting you in a campervan now and into a bespoke campervan later as well with a guaranteed upgrade price. Thanks for watching the video. We've enjoyed it. Keep in touch. See you soon at Sussex Campervans.